Ever wonder how people slept before alarm clocks, memory foam, and blackout curtains? Well, medieval folks had a very different bedtime routine. And honestly, it was kinda weird. They didn't sleep through the night like we do now. Nope, they had something called first sleep and second sleep. Whole families crammed into one bed. Some even shared beds with total strangers at roadside inns. And forget peace and quiet. They slept through noise, fires, even livestock walking around inside the house. So how did they rest? And why did they sleep like that? Let's dive into the strange world of medieval sleep. If you think you sleep weird, imagine going to bed, waking up at midnight, praying, snacking, maybe even visiting your neighbors, then going back to sleep again. Welcome to the bizarre world of medieval sleep, where bedtime was anything but boring. How medieval people slept, and why it was so weird. Hey everyone! Tonight, we're diving into something we all deal with every day: sleep. But more specifically, how people in the Middle Ages slept. And trust me, it was nothing like how we do it now. So before you get all cozy, take a sec to like this video if you're into this kind of stuff, and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Always fun to see who's wide awake with us around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum in the background, and let's step back in time. Before electric lights and sleep apps, there was segmented sleep. Back then, people didn't have phones, streetlights, or advice from sleep coaches online. Their bodies followed the natural rhythm of the night. Most folks didn't sleep straight through. Instead, they had what's called segmented sleep, 2 separate sleep phases, with a break in between. Here's how it worked. As the sun went down, people went to bed early. That first chunk of sleep, about 4 hours. Then, like clockwork, they'd wake up. On purpose, they'd be up for 1 or 2 hours, just doing stuff, not pacing the room out of frustration. This was normal. They might pray, read scripture, check on the fire, or peek outside to make sure the animals hadn't wandered off. And yes, this was also considered the ideal time for couples to be intimate. Apparently, right after waking up was peak cuddle time. After that, they'd go back to sleep, their second sleep, and that would take them into the morning. Everyone from farmers to monks followed this routine. Even writers like Chaucer casually mentioned it in their work. It wasn't seen as weird. It was just the schedule. Oddly enough, modern science now says this 2-part sleep may actually be more natural for humans, especially without artificial light. So the next time you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., don't panic. Just say to yourself, "Ah yes, the watch begins." Medieval beds were not great. Let's talk about beds. Or, well, what passed for beds. These days, we obsess over memory foam, fancy sheets, and cooling pillows. Back then, you were lucky if your bed didn't bite. For most peasants, a bed was just a sack of straw on the floor, called a pallet. If they didn't have a sack, it was just loose hay, possibly damp, possibly shared with a cat. If the family had some extra money, they might lift that straw off the ground using a wooden frame. That helped keep the bugs slightly farther away. Just slightly. Linens were rare. Pajamas didn't exist. People usually slept in the clothes they wore all day. And privacy? Forget it. Whole families, parents, kids, maybe grandma, all shared the same space, sometimes the same pile of straw. If it got too warm, well, just elbow your cousin. The rich, of course, had proper wooden beds with soft mattresses, fancy sheets, and bed curtains to block the draft, and hopefully the lice. Beds were so valuable, they got passed down in wills. Still, for most people, a bed wasn't a place to relax. It was a place to survive the night. Nightcaps weren't drinks, they were hats. Today, a nightcap is a warm drink before bed. Back then, it was an actual cap, a wool or linen hat people wore to bed so their heads wouldn't freeze. Medieval houses were cold, really cold. Thin walls, drafty roofs, and windows made of animal horn or greased paper. No insulation, no heating, unless you counted the family dog. So, people wore nightcaps to trap in body heat. Some looked like wizard hats. Some doubled as modesty covers, especially for married women. In some places, women were expected to keep their heads covered, even while sleeping. And if someone showed up at the door wearing one, that was medieval code for, "I'm not available. Please go away." Sharing beds with strangers was totally normal. Imagine booking a room at an inn after a long trip and being told, "Sure, there's space," in that bed with two other people already in it. Yep, inns didn't offer private rooms. You got a spot in a bed. Privacy wasn't expected. Beds were for sharing. It could be 2, 3, even 4 strangers per bed. It wasn't considered rude, just practical. Some inns grouped people by profession, monks with monks, thieves with thieves, in theory. But usually it was first come, first, scoot over. To protect their belongings, travelers would sleep with money tied to their belts, or tucked into their clothes, or they'd sleep on top of their bags. If it moved, someone was probably stealing it. The rich didn't deal with this. They traveled with staff or demanded private rooms, and got them, because no innkeeper wanted angry nobles wrecking their place. Bedtime was basically preparing for death. In medieval times, sleep wasn't just about rest. It was a spiritual risk. People believed they could die in their sleep, and many did, thanks to illness, fire, or just being over 30 in the year 1247. So before bed, they prayed hard, not for sweet dreams, but for forgiveness. There were specific prayers in case you died before waking. One of the most famous, "If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." Sounds sweet, right? It's actually a medieval panic button. Monks and nuns ended their day with a prayer service called Compline, followed by total silence, not for peace, but because they were exhausted, cold, and terrified of damnation. Even kids were told to pray, partly for their souls, partly to keep them from asking why the family goat was in the bed again. Dreams were taken very seriously today. Dreams are usually weird, funny, or just forgotten. But in the Middle Ages, they were serious business. Dreams were seen as messages from God, from saints, or sometimes from the devil himself. A dream about fire might mean hell. A dream about water could mean cleansing or drowning. If you dreamt about stealing bread, that might be your soul confessing a sin. Or maybe you were just hungry. Either way, confess it. Monks wrote down their dreams. Some even became famous for having holy visions. Others were told to stop eating onions before bed. And of course, dreams showed up all over medieval stories. Knights dreamed of angels or demons or symbolic animals quoting poetry. Basically, it was medieval Netflix, with a lot more guilt. Animals slept in the bed, not for cuddles, but for heat. In medieval homes, especially for the poor, animals weren't kept outside. They were roommates. The family pig, inside, chickens, roaming around, dog, at your feet, goat, probably next to grandma. This wasn't because people were overly affectionate. It was about staying warm. Animals gave off heat, and in freezing winters, that made a huge difference. Sleeping beside a cow could raise the temperature slightly, which could literally be life-saving. Wealthier families didn't need to share beds with livestock, but they still kept pets around, sometimes in their own little rooms, because nothing says, "I'm rich," like your dog having better sleeping arrangements than most humans. Monks had the most miserable beds of all. Think your dorm room was bad? Welcome to the monastic dormitory, where silence was mandatory, comfort was banned, and you slept fully dressed on a wooden plank. Monks followed strict rules. Their beds were simple, with maybe a straw mattress if it was a holiday. No pillows, no curtains, definitely no complaining. They weren't trying to be comfortable. They were trying to avoid sin. Sleep wasn't a luxury. It was a scheduled duty. Some monks even slept sitting up, just to avoid the sin of enjoying sleep too much. Compared to that, peasant straw piles and snoring pigs sound downright luxurious. Waking up at 2 a.m. to pray was not normal. If you've ever had to wake up early and hated it, imagine doing it every single night. Monks got up in the middle of the night for prayer services called matins, often around 2 or 3 a.m. They'd shuffle to the chapel, still in their robes, by candlelight and chant scriptures. Falling asleep during the service, that got you punished, usually with more prayers. Matins could last an hour or more. Some orders stretched it to 2, all before breakfast. So next time you hit snooze on your alarm, remember, at least you're not chanting psalms in the cold with sandals on. Monks, matins, and no sleep at all. After that long, cold midnight prayer service, most monks would shuffle back to bed for a second round of sleep, unless they belonged to a stricter order. In that case, no more sleep. Instead, they went straight into scripture, reading, or manual labor, because nothing says devotion like threshing wheat after 4 hours of broken rest and a candlelit chant. Why so early? The idea was to offer the quietest, most uncomfortable hours of the night to God, long before the sun, the warmth, or REM sleep could distract you. It was a sacrifice of comfort, of sleep, and sometimes of sanity. Once you got past the numb feet and the smoke-stained air, and Brother Ambrose's tone-deaf chanting, it was considered a symbol of spiritual discipline. Sleeping alone? Very suspicious. These days, having your own bed, or even your own room, is a sign of comfort and peace. But back in the Middle Ages, sleeping alone was weird, suspicious even. For one, it was cold, really cold. Stone walls and open chimneys didn't hold heat well. And without central heating, which wouldn't exist for centuries, people huddled together, not for romance, but for survival. Families packed into beds, kids with parents, cousins, even guests. It was like a permanent sleepover no one agreed to, but it wasn't just about warmth. It was about spiritual safety. People believed the night was the devil's playground. If you were alone in the dark, you were more vulnerable to temptation or possession. Sleeping near others acted like a moral alarm system. If something went wrong, someone else might witness it, or at least catch the demon first. Even kids weren't left to sleep alone. They might get snatched by spirits, fairies, or worse. Stories warned against sleeping solo, not to entertain, but to scare them into staying put. Even married couples often shared their beds with children, servants, or travelers. Privacy? That was a fantasy. In some monasteries, monks were punished by being made to sleep alone. That's right. Solitary sleep was a disciplinary action because alone time meant more chances for sinful thoughts. So next time you're enjoying your bed, alone, in peace, with nobody's foot in your face, Remember, in medieval times, you'd probably be sharing it with 2 kids and a goat. Some people slept sitting up on purpose. If you've ever fallen asleep upright on a bus or in a dentist's waiting room, you know how bad it feels. But in the Middle Ages, sleeping like that wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Wealthy folks and super devout types sometimes slept propped up, not lying flat. Why? Well, some believed lying down messed with your digestion or let bad humors collect in your body. Medieval medicine was creative, to say the least. Others thought sleeping flat was risky because it resembled a corpse. The closer you look to death, the more likely the Grim Reaper might drop by early. So many people slept in a half-sitting position, leaning against big pillows, wooden headboards, or even specially angled beds. Monks took it further. Some orders made their members sleep sitting upright, against walls or benches, as a form of spiritual training. No comfort, no dreams, no distractions, just stiffness and righteousness. Fleas, lice, and the bugs in your bed. Forget monsters under the bed. The real horror lived inside the sheets. Fleas, lice, bed bugs. These were the real nighttime terrors in medieval bedrooms. Hygiene was not great. Baths were rare. Laundry was expensive. Soap was sometimes made from ingredients you don't want to Google. Most beds were stuffed with straw, the perfect hiding spot for all kinds of bugs. Fleas and lice weren't just common, they were constant. People just lived with them. Even the rich weren't safe. Fancy beds and satin sheets didn't stop infestations. Some nobles even had servants whose whole job was to pick lice out of their hair. Yes, professional nitpickers were a thing. Bed bugs were sneaky. They lived in wood, in cracks, in mattress seams. They came out at night and fed. If you ever wondered why people wore nightcaps and slept fully dressed, sometimes it wasn't for warmth. It was for bug armor. People tried to fight back. They burned strong-smelling herbs, slept with onions or garlic under the sheets. Some even spread ashes in the bed to keep bugs away. It didn't work that well, but hey, at least it kept romance to a minimum. Sleeping in armor. Because you never know, most people didn't sleep in armor. It was heavy, loud, and uncomfortable. But during war, sieges, or dangerous travel, some people slept partially armored, just in case things got ugly overnight. A knight on campaign might keep on his chainmail shirt or breastplate, ditching only the helmet and gloves. If enemies showed up in the middle of the night, you didn't want to be caught in your underclothes, dreaming about stew. In castles under siege, men-at-arms sometimes used shields as pillows. Swords slept beside them like protective teddy bears. Even merchants or guards might wear gambesons, thick padded jackets, to bed, especially if they were on the road in a risky area. Comfort wasn't the goal. Survival was. And if you rolled over in your sleep, you'd clank loudly, enough to wake everyone up and maybe start a panic. So, while we crawl into memory foam beds, scroll through our phones, and try to fall asleep to white noise machines, medieval people were praying by candlelight after waking from their first sleep, huddled together in freezing rooms, or drifting off beside strangers in roadside inns. Their nights were shaped by firelight, fear, religion, and the chaos of everyday survival. And yet, despite the discomfort, they found rhythms that worked. 2 sleeps, shared warmth, midnight moments of quiet thought or whispered prayers. It's strange to us now, But maybe, just maybe, they understood something we've forgotten. That sleep isn't just about shutting down. It's about how we live between the waking hours. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new, or if you're suddenly wondering if first sleep might actually be a vibe, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the weird side of history.